you can feel reverence because these microphones are really old. They're super expensive. And I'll often I think, psychologically hold back a little bit with the expensive mics. I think you can fix a sound easier than you can fix a performance.
Yeah.
So getting the right feeling for your performance as a singer rather than spending too long focusing on a sound. But the chain really matters as well, which is what I have here. And that combination just works really well. It's like a golden chain.
Here's a Patreon question, and it comes from William Card, who says, Marcus, has your approach to recording vocals changed over the years between the band, your solo records, and working on other artists' projects? Do you do a quick one take or punch in?
Yeah, it depends on the song. It's a really good question. I think I did a lot of singing on an SM7 on the early records, because we just found that dynamically it could deal with, it's the cheapest microphone basically you can get for vocals, and but for some reason it can deal with dynamics, singing real quiet and real loud, in a way that suits my style of singing. I think. What was our chain? It was like a 1073.
Yeah, it would be like 10. I have two 1064s actually, which basically 10, like slightly earlier than 1073. But we'd be going through one of those, and again that Listen Grove, or maybe an LA2A depending on the day, the compressor. And it's just what, because I think you did also sing on the U47 in the booth sometimes, but we found that you're more comfortable feeling the music and kind of like responding to it, and your voice is loud, so like you kind of like you can handle somehow it works, like because of how you sing it can. But I mean, a lot of people, Ed Sheeran does the same thing, Justin often does the same thing, like sings on an SM7 in the room, and it just somehow works, and it has like a great sound. I'm speaking on one right now.
Yeah, I did a bunch on an M49 for my solo record, and I really enjoyed it. It feels like, the choice of microphone for a singer often does come with like an emotional feeling to it. When you're singing on a really expensive U47 or an M49, it can feel like quite hallowed, and you can feel reverence because these microphones are really old. They're super expensive. They're quite fragile, and I'll often I think, psychologically hold back a little bit with the expensive mics, which makes it great for a performance where you're going for something really detailed and maybe quite quiet. If I'm like wanting to move a bit or like shout a bit, my wife thinks we're a very shouty band, then an SM7 works better for me because I feel a bit freer and I feel like I'm not gonna break it so much. So I have an M49 here, and we'd spent a long time choosing it as a band, like which one was right, and we've used it a bunch. And yeah, I enjoyed the moments of like the particular moments on the U47, particularly for the quiet moments where you want all the detail. But in general, like Conversation with My Son, Gangsters and Angels is all on an SM7 on the sofa. But the chain really matters as well, which is what I have here. I have 1066s. I'm not quite as cool as a 1064 guy, but with the Listen Grove. And that combination just works really well. It's like a golden chain for vocals, we find. And then, like I said, at the moment, I'm enjoying them pretty dry. Like we might put a little bit of reverb on them, but in general, it's pretty dry. But so I suppose I started SM7s, moved to expensive microphones, have moved back to SM7s again.
Yeah.
Another anecdote about SM7 and like recording in the room.
This episode is being supported by Tape It, the iPhone app made specifically for musicians. If you, like many of our guests, use voice memos, then switching to Tape It is an obvious choice. And now, Tape It has layering. This means you can record over your voice notes, try out top lines, stack harmonies, build up instruments, jam with yourself, and so much more. layering is such an exciting addition to Tape It's long list of features to help you stay creative and organised, including the ability to record straight from your lock screen, set markers, add notes, and add photos of settings. You can easily import your old voice notes, sync to the cloud, and create shared playlists with co-writers and bandmates. So, head to the link below to install Tape It and use the promo code TAPENOTES to receive a whopping 20% off Tape It Pro. And now, back to the episode.
During the pandemic, I got to make a song with Michael Stipe, and he kind of like, it was just fascinating because he came in the way, and he was recording, he like had a very particular way that he wanted to record, which is how he had always done it, which is that he would be in the control room with a mic in his hand and not want to hear his vocal coming back out of the speakers at all. So he could only hear himself like fighting to be heard over the music, you know. But similar kind of thing where he's like on a cheap microphone and didn't want to hear it at all. And so all the, like, I don't know if it's all his classic vocals, but that was what he wanted. And then you would hear this, when you play it back, it's like, holy shit, that's Michael Stipe. But like, I feel like that's similar with Marcus or Justin or people I've seen do that in the control room with an SM7. It's just like, well, that sounds done. Why does it sound done? It's like, okay, you know, even though we could go in there on a $20,000 mic and do it a different way, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of people find that really inspiring, though. You know, because you often think, oh, these barriers are there; they're stopping us being our best. But you can be your best.
I think you can fix a sound easier than you can fix a performance.
Yeah.
So getting the right feeling for your performance as a singer, rather than spending too long focusing on a sound. It's like Aaron with his plugging his guitar straight into the desk. You know, I think like the options are all there while you're recording, like more options than you've ever had, particularly with plugins, some of which are amazing. But that optionality, I think, can sometimes like overwhelm your choices, and sometimes restricting your choices can be really helpful in the studio and just leads you not to be able to overthink it so much. And
I think White Blank Page is a good anecdote for that, Marcus. So, you know,
yeah,
because you know, that was not an expensive
yeah
setup at all. It was an attic studio. But John, you'll remember that song from the very early days of this band, and
yeah,
the day that it was written, literally, Marcus popped over and we captured it in whatever we were using at that point, Cubase or maybe Logic. But it was like, maybe I had a preamp, maybe not. It was sort of just like a very raw vocal, but the rawness was the truth of the emotion of it. It literally had to like get off Marcus's chest, that song. And then when we got into the opportunity of working on the Sign No More album, maybe a year later, we were in a proper, like an official recording studio with Marcus Drabs, one of the, you know, big icons of our generation, and we just couldn't get it. You know, it didn't matter what equipment was around. It wasn't as true as that vocal. So the actual vocal on the Sign No More album, from the first verse of White Blank Page, is the vocal from the day it was recorded on a probably 75-pound mic.
And it's how we did 90% of the vocals too, on an SM7 in front of the speakers, with them like as loud as they could deal with it, because I want them really loud. So I mean, most of the vocals on this record you'll hear bleed from the speakers. Is it? You know, it's not a traditional record making technique, but for the creative flow we had going making this record, mostly at Long Pond, it was like we were sat in a semicircle in the speaker field, like discussing as we went, you know, lyrics and sounds, and working like so collaboratively that like leaving to go into an ISO booth where you close the door and you are in a different world, at times really helpful tool, and at times for the sound of vocals like really important. But I'd say most of these vocals we did on an SM7 with the speakers on, sat on the sofa with the pad, like the ink was still wet on the page, you know.
right.